There are travels for which a man packs his suitcase with a toothbrush, his razor, a few pairs of socks, several neatly folded shirts and pants, and perhaps a book to make the hours behave themselves. But Thomas Martin had never been an ordinary traveler, and the destination now awaiting him was unknown, not printed on any train schedule, and he was unsure how long his stay would be or what he would need to pack. Thomas Martin left Emily's home, and by 1 a.m., he had completed putting all his worldly affairs in order. He left behind a one-page handwritten note, to whom it may concern. In it, he chronicled all that had taken place since Thanksgiving 1 year ago, giving permanence in ink and paper to his current state of mind. He locked the mortuary files and placed the key under the insole of his left shoe. With absolutely no clues about the conditions his new destination required or how long his stay might be, he packed what he thought were some essentials: his black suit, the one he wore to funerals, one white shirt, one necktie, a few changes of socks and underwear, and some toiletries. He also took a copy of his family tree, a pen, his phone charger, 2 blank death certificates, one for him and one for Emily, and his teddy bear called Baby, as an offer of proof that he was indeed the Thomas Martin his family was awaiting. He considered packing food, then rejected the idea. The dead, he reasoned, were not likely to dine. He considered bringing some cash. He then rejected that idea as well. He reasoned that, whatever currency they used in the place he would be visiting, it was unlikely to bear the face of any former leader of government or two-bit politician. At 2 a.m., he telephoned Emily Westbrook. "The next phase begins tonight," he said. "Pack a suitcase. Please come now. They are waiting." Then he hung up. Emily stood in her bedroom with the phone trembling in her hand. She wanted to go. She had emphatically told Martin so, but wanting to do something in the glow of candlelight was different from preparing for it under the indifferent glare of a closet bulb. What did one pack for such a trip? A sweater? Identification? Lipstick? A cell phone? She placed her cell phone in her coat pocket, then removed it, then put it back again. Agitated as she was, she finally made the decision to bring a small overnight bag in which she placed a flashlight, a notepad, a travel-sized bottle of ibuprofen, a bottle of sparkling water, and a photograph of her beloved father. She then left for Thomas Martin's house. Emily found Martin in his backyard cemetery, standing beside his suitcase beneath the old maple tree. He looked relieved to see her. "You came," he said. Emily looked past him, saw 42 headstones bathing in the moonlight, frosted grass. There was no evidence of a train station, no depot, no tracks, no platform, nothing. Just Thomas Martin standing alone, expecting a train that existed only in his imagination. "Thomas," she said softly, "there's nothing here." Martin turned toward the empty yard, then back to her. "You don't see it?" "No." "The rails, the platform, the sign?" "No." For a moment, Emily saw not an undertaker or a genealogist or a creator of the impossible. She saw a deeply broken man standing in the graveyard he had built for himself. She stepped toward him, embraced him tightly, then pulled back. "You're in a living nightmare. This is all a bad dream," she whispered. "You need help. I can help you find someone, a therapist, a doctor, someone who can bring you back to your senses." Martin stared at her with indignance. "I don't need your help anymore," he said coldly. "It is you who will need my help." Yet as sternly as he spoke, Emily stood her ground. Perhaps compassion held her there. Perhaps curiosity. Perhaps it was the same fatal hunger that once made men traverse the globe beyond maps to find their own destinies. Emily implored Martin to leave at once and to join her at her home for some coffee. He refused. For fear that Martin might do harm to himself, Emily remained by his side. They went inside the morgue together. The 42 coffins rested in stacked rows like sealed arguments. Emily spoke gently. What if it isn't by rail? What if crossing over requires something else? Martin looked toward his own coffin. My headstone says that I have been deceased for more than a year now. I have already crossed over. That doesn't make you dead, said Emily. No, he said. My continued existence proves something far more significant. It proves that the dead can walk among the living and not know which side they occupy. It proves that death is man's creation. It proves that men do not experience death in the way they've been told throughout their entire lives. And now, it is time for us to take a brief respite to listen to an intermezzo conceived by world-renowned composer E. Dudek, after which the saga of Thomas Martin will resume. We continue. That same morning, Harold Finch stood before a magistrate in the Harborview courthouse answering to charges of grave robbery. Finch, who had dug far too many holes and had seen too many impossibilities, was in no position to dig his own grave in a courtroom that day. He had to tell the truth because no lie available to him was large enough or plausible. When questioned by the magistrate, Finch spoke of Martin's cemetery in great detail. 42 headstones, 42 coffins that had never been buried, the caskets stored in Martin's mortuary, the childhood relics found in his grandmother's coffin, the vanished coffins at the Harborview Cemetery, the erased dates. Then Finch spoke in detail about the reports he read in the Ashwick Courier concerning the Thanksgiving dinner at Martin's home a year ago. 5 sudden deaths, parents, siblings. The magistrate listened. First with skepticism, then concern, and then with conviction. He recessed the matter, set a new trial date, dismissed Finch, and then immediately telephoned the Ashwick Police Department. He was referred to Detective Miller, who was leading the investigation into the Thanksgiving Day deaths. The magistrate told Miller that the purpose of the call was to get some information in connection with Thomas Martin. Yes, Miller said. Martin has been under investigation for several months now. The magistrate leaned back in his desk chair. For what, may I ask? For the deaths of his mother, father, his 2 sisters, and his brother a little over a year ago. Yesterday we received a toxicology report from the county coroner's office that found traces of cyanide in their cadavers. If you would have called me yesterday, I would have told you that Martin was just a person of interest. Today, he is suspected of 5 first-degree murders. There was a pause. Then Miller added, right now, we're preparing a warrant for his arrest. Back in Martin's mortuary, his phone pinged. He lifted it and looked down at the screen. It was a flashing amber alert. Yes, from the same insistent, untraceable phone number. Boarding has been delayed. Then a second message. Authorities are approaching. And then a third. Justice is on its way. Martin looked at Emily, and in that very instant they heard the sound of cars approaching Martin's driveway. Emily looked out the window. Her eyes widened. It's the police. They're in your driveway. Thomas, what have you done? Martin did not answer. The coffins began to creak one by one. Lids trembled. The room filled with whispers. Mother, father, brother, sisters, grandfather, grandmother, strangers. Mark Casey calling through smoke, Emily's father calling out her name from somewhere behind the walls. Then Martin's suitcase snapped open by itself. Inside, his teddy bear sat upright. Its stitched mouth had changed. Baby was frowning. From the coffin bearing Thomas Martin's name came the sound of a conductor's whistle. Emily backed away. Martin stepped forward. The floorboards beneath his coffin split, revealing two black rails gleaming in the darkness below the mortuary floor. Now Emily saw the station arise with her own eyes. The station was no longer in the cemetery. It had moved and was now directly under the morgue. Martin looked at Emily. "I told you," he said with certitude. But before Martin and Emily could collect their wits and their belongings to escape, the house was surrounded by the police, lights flashing, officers in protective gear, body armor, long guns. They kicked in the door. "Surrender! We have a warrant for your arrest. You are being charged with 5 counts of murder in the first degree. You have the right to remain silent and be represented by legal counsel. If you don't have a lawyer, the court will provide you with one." They showed Martin the signed court order. They handcuffed Martin and Emily and placed them in the back seats of 2 separate police cruisers. The train had already vanished without Martin, without Emily. In the wake of the commotion, what remained was an eerie sound of applause, echoing in the distance. The police began their search. They took all of Martin's file cabinets, all of his mortician's equipment, his computer, the farewell note he left on his desk. They went upstairs to his kitchen and placed all of the silverware into boxes, his electric carving knife. But most importantly, they had a truck waiting outside to haul away the 42 coffins Martin had sitting in his morgue. Wearing latex gloves, detectives assigned to the homicide unit strictly adhered to the chain of custody protocols, meticulously labeling each casket with a unique identification number for future reference as evidence in a court proceeding. By the time the search and seizure was complete, Martin and Emily were behind bars at the local police station. In his head, Martin already began to execute a new plan. He pledged to himself that he would not cooperate and succumb to an interrogation, and desperately hoped that Emily would not sell him out. Charged with 5 murders, he needed a lawyer, the best criminal defense attorney money could buy. It had just been hours ago that Martin thought he would be leaving on a train, bound for a place where he could be reunited with his deceased relatives. Bewildered, he was now sitting alone in a prison cell, awaiting his fate. Thomas Martin, a man who packed a suitcase for the afterlife, discovered that judgment does not travel light. It carries with it the heavy burdens of one's earthly misdeeds. For some passengers leaving the Conflation Station, the final destination is a revelation. For others, it is accountability. And for Thomas Martin, well, his ticket had already been punched.